Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Alexis Bailey. I'm Vice President of Government Affairs here at NJBIA, and very happy that you can join us here to hear from the Commissioner from the Department of Labor on the new teen working papers process. So as you know, NJBIA was very supportive of the legislation passed last year to extend the summer working hours for our teen workers, as well as moving the working papers process to an online system instead of, the current system where you have to go through your school district and do a paper process each year. So we're very excited to see that this process is being implemented by DOL. They've been working very hard on this. And before coming on here, we were talking about a great opportunity for something to be made easier and streamlined through state government. So happy to have the commissioner here and his team to talk about this new process and everything that we're seeing that's going to be launched on June 1st. So thank you very much, Commissioner, for taking the time. And before I turn it over to you, I'll just give everyone a little bit of a brief introduction on you. So Commissioner Acero Angelo was nominated by Governor Murphy to serve as the Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Labor and Workforce Development in January of 2018. As Commissioner, he's proud to oversee the state's diverse services for all New Jersey workers. Due in part to his innovation and leadership at the department, in February 2021, he was chosen by his counterparts from across the country to be the board chair of the National Association of State Workforce Agencies for the 2021 year. From 2010 to 2017, he served as the Eastern Regional Representative for the U.S. Department of Labor and the Barack Obama administration, managing the department's regional activities, coordinating federal initiatives on the regional, state, and local levels. Prior to entering into government service, he worked for the Laborers International Union, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, and the Service Employees International Union Local 1115. He earned his bachelor's degree from Boston University and his master's in public policy from the Eagleton Institute of Politics at Rutgers, and is a proud lifelong New Jersey resident and lives in Middlesex County, with his family. So thank you very much, Commissioner, for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you to give us an update on this exciting process.
Thank you, Alexis. Thank you for reading my biography. Now we can all go home. That was way too long, but thank you, everybody. I'm psyched to be here today. Thank you for NJBIA for always helping us get the message out to so many of the great businesses in New Jersey. We've done a few of these presentations now. We've done a couple in person, and it must have gone so well because I see some folks who are in person who are now on the webinar. Great to see you again. We just did one this morning at Newark City Hall. We did one in Atlantic City last week. I hope that what comes through the most is that we're really excited about this. We're excited about what this means for our economy in New Jersey. We're excited about what this means for young workers. We're excited about what this means for school boards and school district staff who don't have to deal with this anymore. We're excited what this means for doctors who no longer are part of the process. It can focus on patient care. And we're excited what this means for the future of the things we haven't even started to do with this information yet. But we're hopefully the point is to make this process easier for employers, to make it more likely for them to hire young workers in New Jersey. So I also want to say later on, our Deputy Assistant Commissioner Nick Toth, who's here today also, who'll be overseeing the working papers process, and he'll be walking us through the process in a little bit. It's an exciting time for NJDOL, as I said, and it's sort of like a two-track change right now. We're going not only just bringing a process into the online digital world, but we're also changing the policy behind that process in the first place. So it's not like other modernizations, like, where this thing existed, now it's going to be online and more user-friendly. The whole process of getting working papers itself in statute changes on June 1st. This all started with legislation, Assembly Bill 4222, which was signed by Governor Murphy in July of last year. As you may know, it immediately expanded hours for some minors while school was out of session, effective immediately last summer. And I appreciate the business community for being great partners in that process. When the bill was on its path to passage, we raised alarms that this part of the process we learned about today would never have been up and running by June 1st of last year. But clearly the hour extensions, expansions did go into effect last year. So I thank you for your help and having them sort of split up the parts of that bill as far as implementation times. So this portion of the bill shifts the responsibility for working papers from the Department of Education and all the school boards to the Department of Labor. We're charged with creating one central database to register both youth workers and the employers who will be hiring them. So as of June 1st, we are absorbing the work of 600 plus school districts in the state and centralizing it into one hub, myworkingpapers.nj.gov. This will make the process easier across the board. We see a steady stream of applicants for working papers year-round, with a surge around late spring and early summer as school lets out and summer employment begins. In total, about 130,000 applications for working papers are received annually. With the old way of doing working papers, each young worker would need to see their school administrator to get a paper application, then physically go to their prospective employer and their caregiver for further documentation and approvals. As somebody whose son is dealing with this process right now, even though he is very smart, he's going to a great college next year. He has a car, he has gas, there are roads for him to drive on. He knows where the school is and knows where the doctor's office is. Apparently, it's a very confusing process because it's not been completed yet. And no, he's not behind me listening to me. So this new system, it's all going to be in one place so we can easily track where the application is in the process. Right now, we have more than 74,000 workers who are 16 to 17 years old, and we expect that number to spike in the coming weeks. Young workers, as you may know, are most commonly found in the fast food industry, restaurants, grocery stores, retail, and of course, seasonal jobs, which we're all excited about for this summer. Those jobs not only provide income to support themselves and their families, but also priceless experience to help them build the work ethic and mindset they'll take with them into a long and healthy career. And with the new Working Papers website, we'll be there to support them every step of the way. The site will also give teens access to a suite of online information and services specifically for them, information about how to write a resume, develop interviewing skills, and find a job. Resources for workers with disabilities, announcements on upcoming job fairs, and the protections and rights minors are entitled to under child labor laws. So starting June 1st, minors and employers will be able to go to myworkingpapers.nj.gov to apply for the working papers required for teens to start their jobs. The teen worker and the employer kick off the process by each creating an account. The teen's caregiver will also have access to do their part. We'll hear more about those details in just a moment. But keep in mind, what we do show you today is a working demo. Even when we go live on June 1st, we'll still be making improvements. So please don't hesitate to check out the site and share your feedback with us so we can make this site the best it can be. And don't worry, all working papers applications submitted before June 1st will still be valid. As I mentioned, this shift will allow us to deliver important information directly to young workers and their parents, like career paths, training opportunities, apprenticeships, and their rights under the law. Governor Murphy and our legislature have worked hard to ensure teen workers and workers of all ages are treated fairly. We've seen worker benefits and protections increase dramatically in the past 5 years. The higher minimum wage, paid sick days, equal pay, expanded family leave are contributing to year-over-year employment growth. In those same 5 years, we've seen our businesses continue to flourish, including an impressive 26% increase amongst our smallest employers, those with 5 or less employees. Our private sector has gained back all the jobs lost during the pandemic and then some, with our unemployment rate holding steady at 3.5%. And impressively, we now have the most people working in our state and most employers ever employing workers in New Jersey. And good news recently that our labor participation rate is at about 65%, which is higher than we've seen in a decade. It's taken the efforts of everyone on this webinar to make it happen. Our staff, our policymakers, our employers, our educators, our workforce development teams, our workers, all of us banding together and doing our part to ensure that this state thrives. The governor has continually advocated for a stronger and fairer economy for all, and we're here to do just that, to ensure our workforce is among the strongest and safest in the country, to see our businesses flourish, and to do our part to help achieve the governor's vision. Thank you for being such strong partners of us. I look forward to continuing to work together to make our state and our economy even better in the future. So next up, our Deputy Assistant Commissioner, Nick Toth, will give you a more in-depth breakdown of the new working papers process, and will be available questions afterwards as well. Thank you, everybody. I guess over to Nick.
Okay. Well, first off, Alexis, NJBIA and team, thanks for giving us the time to present on this. And thank you, Commissioner, for the opening remarks and setting the table here. I know that we have a slide deck I'm going to run through. I'm going to try to keep this pretty tight, short and sweet, so we have some time for questions. Usually the past few events that we've done around the state have really been beneficial once we open it up to kind of troubleshoot some of those more nuanced questions. But basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go through the employer experience for this to show step by step what the employer needs to be doing, what to expect, what the system's going to look like. As the commissioner indicated earlier, this is a working model. We go live on June 1, but we're making tweaks at the margins up until that date. So pretty much all this will be the same, but there might be some tweaks in there, but it should be good enough for folks to get a good understanding of what the process will look like. So this slide in particular is the landing page for my working papers.nj.gov. This is where everyone starts for their registration. So for an employer, this is going to be a two-step process out of the gate, and then moving forward throughout time, it'll just be a one-step process. The reason why it's a two-step process now is because employers will need to register for their account to manage their minor working papers, but they'll only need to do that one time. And so I'll go through the registration process, and then I'll go through the process of approving a minor's set of working papers on the employer end. So Jason, next slide, please. So once you click the register button, you're prompted to identify whether you're a minor or an employer. In this case, we're an employer. We're going to say that we're Waystar Royco, putting in the business name, job title, first and last name of the individual filling out on behalf of the employer, and then of course their email address. This will begin the registration process for their account. They will click next, which will bring us to our next slide. And the employer will then put in their FEIN number, which I'm sure all employers on the call are no stranger to that. Sort of like your social security number as a business. Country's auto-populated, and then you'll put in your street, city, zip, and state. Next slide, please. So once you advance there, there's an attestation, which is basically saying that employers will be adhering to state child labor laws, and that they should probably review any policies that may regulate their workplace, particularly with respect to hazardous work sites and or hazardous occupations. But this is just a simple attestation indicating that they intend to adhere to governing state law. Next slide, please. So once you advance there, you have a successfully registered account. The workflow for the minor, the employer, and the caregiver are all email-based, and you'll see this process for the employer here. So after you've started your registration, it sends an email to the email address that you've provided. Next slide. And that email address will come in. You'll click on that link. Next slide. And that'll take you to a pre-populated menu just for you to verify the information that you input. Again, contact name, first, last name, employer, email. Next slide. And then again, company name, company phone, work site address. This is an important distinction. In some cases, we'll have larger companies that have maybe a corporate address, and then there may be several different work sites around. So you'll put in the work site address, and if it's the same as the corporate address, you'll simply click yes at the bottom. If you click no, it'll give you an opportunity to input a secondary address. So in some cases, you may have a corporate address and a work site address. For cases where the corporate address is the work site address, you'll simply click yes and then hit the next button, which will take us to our next slide. Like all of us in the technological age, we've filled out hundreds, if not thousands, of account signups. This is just where you develop your password. So you'll put in your password, you'll confirm your password, and then you'll hit change password, or in this case, register password. And then next slide, please. Thank you for providing that information. Your password is now set up. Your account is now set up. Next slide. Now, once the employer does this, it's going to bring them back to the landing page, and they will also receive an email. Next slide. This email, once you complete your registration, is very important. You've now completed that first step I was talking about. That's the first and last time the employer will ever have to do that for this. What that does is that generates a unique employer code. This is how we connect the employer to the minor. So for the employers out there, this is a very important number. It'll be on your account online and visible. But what you want to do, and this is the really a main focal point, is for every minor that you intend on hiring, share this number with them. If you have an account already set up, simply just give the minor the code and they can start their working papers process. But if they don't have this code, they will have an opportunity to look you up manually, but we're trying to drive people away from that because of the possibility of maybe if it's CVS, they may select a CVS in a different county, different work site. This really ties them to the organization that provided them with a promise of employment. So you will share that code with your minor. Next slide. Your minor will go in. They will put in their basic information, their name, their phone number, their email address. They'll set up their account just like the employer did. And then as soon as the minor submits their application for working papers, it prompts the employer that there's an action required. So I'm hiring a minor. I gave them the unique code. Now they come back. They've put in their application. They've submitted it. As an employer, I now have to review the information they submitted. So you'll get this email. Next slide, please. It'll say action required. Greg Hirsch has submitted his working papers and the employer has to review it. So you'll go back to your account. Next slide. And as you can see, there's a file for Greg Hirsch. That's the application number on the left-hand side. You'll click on the application number. Next slide. By the way, a step-by-step guide here will also be available to the public. So I know I'm flying through this, but it's a pretty straightforward, intuitive process, but we will have supplemental information out there for folks that have trouble. All right, so now I'm the employer. I got Greg's application for minor working papers, but I need to fill out some information. And as you see at the top, the employers need to fill out details of the application below and then click approve. In order to do that, you click the edit button on the top left side. And next slide, please. That'll bring up this box. So simply verifying or inputting occupation type, minor's job title and job duties. And if there's no issue there, you click save. If there is an issue there, you have a box for reasons for rejection. So maybe this isn't a person that you had discussed employment with. Maybe something else came up where there was a reason for rejection. You do have the opportunity to reject, but in this case, we'll say that everything is all right and you'll click save. Next slide, please. And that'll bring up one other panel. This is a very important panel for employers, by the way. Here, it'll pre-populate the job title and the duties, and the employer will have to put in the minor working hours and their wages per hour. This is very important because we want to ensure that we capture the number of hours essentially and the wage. There's a lot of different really cool applications for this that I won't go into. But just like the old form that we used to have, that we used to old school it back to the schools to fill out and submit, we're asking for the work hours and the wage. So once that is complete, filled out and complete, click save. Next slide. And then you're prompted to do one more attestation. Basically, you're attesting that you've given them an offer of employment, that they've provided proof of age. I actually think, I just want to say this, we may have eliminated the age verification piece. We got some feedback from employers last week and this week. It was a secondary verification that we wanted to do, but we gave it some thought and said, you know what, let's not make this too complicated for employers. We assume that they'll be doing the age verification at the end, and we also will be receiving proof of age from the caregiver, which I'll get into next. So this will change a little bit, but you still will authorize that there was an employment offer made. And then this point is also very important. The employers will need to identify whether the minor will be working on a hazardous work site or within a hazardous occupation. That verbiage is going to change slightly, but it's basically the same concept. And if that is a yes, there'll be a description. There'll also be a review process to ensure that, we don't have someone, that's 13 years old working a deli slicer because that's a prohibited job under current child labor law in the state. So if all is good here, not a hazardous work site, you authorize them for employment, you click approve, next slide. And your approval has been registered. What happens from here is the minor receives an email, and the caregiver that the minor has put in, so this could be a parent, a guardian, aunt and uncle, basically someone that's approving on their behalf, they will receive an email address, an email link to sign up for their account, so they can go in, verify the information that now not only the minor but the employer has approved, to make sure they're not working too many hours, or so the parent has an opportunity and say, hey, I don't want my son working in a chemical facility, something along those lines. But they'll also be providing proof of age. Next slide, please. So once the application is approved on the employer side, you get this email, and then the last step is caregiver. So the caregiver, once they go in, they provide proof of age. They will submit, and so long as there's no flags, the application will be approved. One nuance that I do want to point out here, and this is a question that came up a few times, was there is a 2-week window for the caregiver to respond for either approval or denial of the minor's working papers. If there is a non-response within 2 weeks, and this is pursuant to state law based on how the bill was wrote, they will be defaulted into authorized to work. So 2-week window, if I'm the employer, I'm saying, hey, Greg, what's up with your working papers? And Greg says, I'm still waiting on my mom or my dad to approve. 2 weeks goes by, the system will automatically approve the working papers. And obviously, prior to that 2 weeks, that the caregiver will have the opportunity to either approve or deny. And next slide. And then finally, once the caregiver approves and uploads proof of age, you're done. Application complete. So when we've tested this, as you can see, the fields that we're requiring, are consistent with state law. We're not really going above and beyond too much, but it's pretty straightforward. It really is straightforward, and it usually takes about 10 to 15 minutes if all parties are online at the same time and just saying, okay, I got the email, I'm going to sign on. Let's assume it'll take longer than that in the real world, but it's a whole lot easier than having to go face-to-face with your employer, face-to-face with your parent, and face-to-face with your school counselor to turn these things in and hop into a car and drive all around, potentially around the state, especially for people that may be working at the shore that are coming from PA. The old way, they'd have to drive to the shore, get their employer to sign off, and then send it in. So this is really simplifying that, and we're really excited about how much this will simplify the process overall. But as with any new system, there'll be a learning curve, and there'll be areas of improvement. We're planning on a phase 2 to put some bells and whistles on this thing, but that's pretty much it. That's the whole thing. So I think when I was presenting, I saw a number of questions come in. I'm certainly open for Q&A, and I'll punt it back to BIA to see how you guys want to do that.
Thanks so much. There's definitely a few questions in the chat, and thank you, Commissioner. I see you replying to some of them already. One thing you addressed, but just to clarify if anyone didn't catch it, this is for out-of-state teen workers as well. Like you mentioned, that was a question that popped up in the chat. Also, someone asked, just scrolling back because there's a lot in here, would employers need to, if they have multiple job sites, do they need to just register one time and get that identification code, or would they need to register for each different site that they have?
Solid question. That's the second time I got that one today. So I'm going to answer this in 2 ways. One, the employer can decide whether they want multiple accounts or a single account. So you may have an entity that says, no, I want Tony in HR to be responsible for processing all minor working papers for the entire company. In that case, they'll only need one account, and the work site and or corporate site will still be reflected in the workflow that we went through before, but it would be a singular account. In other cases, you may have a Bristol-Myers Squibb that has multiple different operations, different work sites, different addresses. They will be able to set up as many accounts as they need. The FEIN number, the corporate identifier, it will be consistent across, but it will not bar a company from having, especially a large company that may employ thousands of people, having 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 accounts, and they can do it in a decentralized manner. So it's both a business decision on how they want to run it, but also with respect to the system, the flexibility is there to allow for multiple accounts.
Great, that's awesome for flexibility for employers. Also, would minors have to fill out this working papers process every year if they're going to be working at, say, the same stand at the Boardwalk every summer, or is this good until they turn 18?
I think I can answer here, but Commissioner, correct me if I'm wrong. If they're with the same employer and they're doing the same job, they only got to do it once. The only time they'll have to refile is when they switch occupation or company, which is the same as it was with the paper process.
Okay. And there was a question in here as well about your doctor having to verify no more medical verification through this process.
The governing statute no longer requires that.
As of June 1st.
As of June 1st.
Great. Another question, not directly related to the demo, but I know you, Commissioner, mentioned it previously, how you're really excited about this, giving a lot more data on teenage workers to the department and using that as a workforce development tool going forward. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of your hopes for the future once this is all out and working really successfully?
Listen, I don't need to tell anyone on this call the challenge companies have finding workers and the challenge that youth have finding valuable employment that leads to a career pathway. Certainly, one of our goals for this is to help us fill, whether it be training programs, apprenticeship programs, just help employers with job fairs. It's not going to be ready on June 1st, but our goal is to use this as a statewide hiring hub for both sides of that equation for young workers across New Jersey, and importantly, to provide the minor workers with information about career paths, providing them with data about the job they're doing now, what skills they're attaining, what might be a next step, what might be a good credential for them to seek. Just the possibilities are literally endless in this realm. So stay tuned. We definitely want to get this up and running for the statutory necessity of it. Make sure it's running smoothly before we're able to sort of turn out to kick it into next year to make this a super powerful tool that I think will be unique to the New Jersey workforce.
That's fantastic. And we look forward to working with you throughout that process. I know a lot of our members are very excited, and we're excited for this as a workforce development tool going forward. Also in the chat, there was a lot of questions about minimum wage posting requirements and things of that nature. I know the commissioner put in a link from the department's website on Know Your Rights for employers and for employees on different things that you should be complying with. I also encourage everyone on the call. NJBIA has fast facts that kind of go over, high level things that you need to make sure you're watching out for compliance. But if you have any additional questions for that offline, feel free to reach out to our team. We're happy to help you out with those things. But I know the commissioner provided links for that in the chat as well.
Yeah, I see the questions about the caregiver approval. So just to be clear, this is a different part of the process now. I mean, literally, this process can be done in a matter of minutes. If an employee interviews with you and you think you want to hire them, you can give them the code on the spot. They can literally go on their phone and fill everything out, call their caregiver, tell them to check their email. The caregiver complete their process in a matter of minutes, and within 5 minutes, this can all be done. However, if the caregiver does not approve, there's a 2-week window for them to approve or not approve. Or I'm sorry, there's a 2-week window where if they don't approve, then the worker can start working. However, after that 2 weeks, if the caregiver all of a sudden decides that no, I don't want my child working in this industry or working in this job, they can at that point decline to approve, and then at that point the papers will be revoked.
And just to take that a step further, because I think there was a question in the chat, is the minor eligible to work in that interim period between caregiver approval and the 14 days? And my understanding is that no, if the 14 days have to pass first, if they're waiting for caregiver to respond. So in lieu of caregiver response, the minor is not eligible to work until either the caregiver responds in the affirmative or that 14-day period eclipses or sunsets.
And there was a question in the chat. I know the commissioner mentioned it at the start of his remarks, but if you have workers that have already filled out the paper process, they're grandfathered in and you don't need to worry about that. And again, to clarify, I see a question in the chat. If you have the minor that's coming back to work at the same job they've always been at, they don't need to fill out this process twice.
Correct.
And then another question, are you going to be putting out a step-by-step guide? I know we're recording this and we'll share this with the members that are registered, but is there going to be any materials guides that employers can look at to go forward after June 1st?
Yes, so all of those materials will be uploaded on the myworkingpapers.nj.gov website. And we'll have a number of resources. We'll have our FAQs, which will be a living document based on the feedback that we continue to receive from the public. We'll have a step-by-step guide. We'll have a Know Your Rights section for minors. And over time, we anticipate that we're even going to likely use this as an opportunity to put up other resources like workforce development opportunities and other things that the public can benefit from seeing.
Great. I see another question in the chat about overtime. Now that teens are able to work up to 50 hours over the summer, can you just touch on overtime and how that works for teens as they're over the 40 hours?
Commish?
We do not have someone from Wage Hour on the call today, so I'm wary of answering questions about the wage hour law aspect of this. And just to be clear, and that's sort of which I don't think I mentioned before. So I'm going to find someone's here. I just put a link in there to Jacob's question. That has all the answers on there about the legal work hours and availability for young workers. Overtime is not affected by their hour. They still need to pay overtime according to the law. What I was going to say is that, the exciting thing for me about this is that we're taking this whole process out of the wage hour child labor enforcement realm and putting it into the workforce development realm. Now, to be clear, we take child labor violations extremely seriously. If you watch the news the past year or so, we've gone after some very large employers who've had some very large settlements about child labor. You see other states rolling back the clock to pre-industrial revolution laws on child labor. That is not the case here in New Jersey. So certainly look at our website, check out the laws and regs about child labor. But to be clear, this process now is about for us for workforce development, but that will in no way hamper or if anything, that's strengthening our ability to also bring about and protect young workers in the state, making that process easier. But the point is, instead of you filling out working papers and then going into a file drawer somewhere in our building to only get pulled out for an investigation, we're using this dynamic data and contact availability to further protect our workers and empower our workforce.
Thank you. And I know the link is in the chat, but someone asked what the expansion is. It's for 16 and 17-year-olds in the summer months can work up to 50 hours. And the link's in the chat for you to get more details on that.
I see a couple times on here, if they've already done the paperwork, you do not need to redo it. They're all set.
Yes, this is all about making it simpler, easier. Commissioner and his team have made sure you don't have to file everything twice, so do not worry about that. I think we've captured all the questions that I've seen in the chat so far. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to type them in or unmute yourself and ask. That's fine too. If
I see Ben asked about, well, can you register before June 1st? They have to wait till June 1st per the statute. That, according to the law, doesn't go into effect. So this new process can't even go into effect publicly until June 1st.
Mm-hmm. So if you have workers this week that you're trying to get them everything figured out, you're still able to do that on paper, but you can wait until June 1st for the online process.
The school ending date is about where that student is, and even if they're in Pennsylvania, it's about when their school ends there. So they need to be aware of that. You need to be aware and make sure that you get the answer from them.
Mm-hmm. And again, for clarification, because I see another question, that 14-day window for the caregiver to respond, after that, they're automatically approved. So that's another clarification that was mentioned.
Correct. Of course, the approval can be printed for record keeping, but when you, as an employer, you're going to have a dashboard of all the minors working for you on your employer dashboard. Right, Nick?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. So somebody asked about record. The employers will be able to log on and see all the minors they have working for them who've got their process approved.
Yes, that's exactly right. And actually, in phase 2 of this build, phase 1 is the sort of stock model. We'll put the the luxury model out in production over the summer. In phase 2, we're actually talking about, because with some employers, we could be talking about potentially hundreds of people. We may even arrange it in a way where they can segment, year over year. These are the minors they had in 2023, 2024, and make it as user-friendly for employers as possible. But at a minimum, this system iteration will allow for that single dashboard of all the different applications that are either in process or they've approved.
And someone asked, is it a single communication here, or can multiple recipients be set up through the system? I think, like Nick mentioned, you can have as few or as many people logging on and creating accounts here. So I think that's kind of up to your business and what works best for you. And then I see, will existing minors that use the manual paperwork process, will they be included on the online dashboard?
They will not.
But to be clear, I was about to type this. If you want, I mean, they certainly can go on and register, and you can register as an employee. If you want to have them and have that data in there, you're certainly going to have them do that and go through the caregiver approval process digitally. They've already completed on paper. Again, to be clear, they are working legally, but if you, for whatever reason, want to have that at your availability, you can have them go on there and do it and do the digital version.
This is an industry-specific question, so if we have to follow up later, we can do that. But it says youth employed in agriculture used to only need working papers until the age of 15. Does this new system require workers to have the papers until 18 in this industry?
We'll have to get back to you.
Okay. I think that's most of the questions. Some of these seem duplicative, but if anyone has additional questions, if we didn't catch you in the chat or didn't get to it, please feel free to send me an email. We can follow up with the commissioner's team to get any additional information that you need. One question says, are there modifications for people with disabilities? How can school personnel support high school students who require working papers?
That's a great question. Just because the school district is not mandatory to be on there, it doesn't mean they can't help anybody through the process, just like any other, or they can go to the one stop or whatever else. It's all going to be online now, or the library. Just like you had any supports from anything before, doesn't mean those supports can't be used to help the worker or the employer go through this process.
And our employers are not able to set up their account until June 1st either, right?
Correct.
Okay. If the minor quits, is there anything you have to do online to remove them from your account?
No.
Okay. And then on the working hours that you have to list for each of the minors, if you have a business where their schedule varies week to week, how do you recommend handling putting in those hours?
So I think I said this at the roundtable last week. This is not a payroll system. What we care about most is the total amount of hours per day, right? I don't think it asks what hour to what hour, but it's about total hours. Just like now, like obviously no one is changing the working papers paper process every time they change someone's hours. So it's just, we're not looking for folks to come in unless there's drastic changes to the schedule of making any changes, nor do I even think it's editable in there, Nick. I don't know about that.
No, not in this current situation. To Commissioner's point, daily hours, weekly hours, that's what we're most concerned about.
Okay. And then Kenneth Brawl, I see your hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm actually Erin. It's under Ken Braille, but I have a question, and I know we've touched on it. I just want to be completely sure I'm understanding. So I am in charge of the paperwork. We have one corporate FEIN, as well as all of our stores have different FEINs. So if I make an account with, say, our main office FEIN, and then I add all of the different stores that we have, is there going to be a place for their FEINs, or do I have to create an account for each individual store for their FEINs?
I'm confused. I mean, it's who is paying them? Where's what account? Who's the account holder where their money is coming from?
Well, they're each individually owned stores, but we have one corporate FEIN, as well as each store has its own. So we're a grocery store. We have, multiple different FEINs. They're all under different ones, but I am the one who does the working papers for all of those 5 stores. So would I be able to create an account under my name 5 different times is really my thing. I don't mind doing that, but is it going to kick me out because I'm using my information 5 different times for 5 different accounts?
That's a unique scenario. I think in terms of having multiple accounts, if you're going to assume this role, I don't think there'll be an issue there. I just need to, I don't want to speak inaccurately. I would want to check with our development team to see if you use the same email address,
Yeah,
if that could
would
pose
be
a problem. And that's just me erring on the side of caution. That may not be an issue. But I don't want to sit here and say that you'll be fine in that scenario and then not. So I think we can definitely bring that back to the development team. Generally, like, I think a default, at least in the beginning, the safe side is just to have your franchisees or whatever the arrangement is to have their own account with their own frontline manager. But I do see the value in having it centralized in your circumstance. So more than happy to provide follow-up. Certainly going to make that in my notes to see, just to make sure there's going to be no issue there, because I don't want you guys to call in like a week and said, hey, you said this and now it's this. But feel free to reach out to me directly on that particular question, and we can get it out. But very good point. Very interesting nuance.
Okay, thank you. Would you just be able to put your email down below so I can grab it?
Of course.
Thank you.
And how many locations can be added under one account?
I think as of now, it's just one, and because the presumption is that the minor is going to be have one work site. That being said, there could be a case where they get bounced around. I don't know, but right now it's one. And to the commissioner's earlier point, like I think it's not a payroll system. Like if they end up on another site, I don't think it's the worst. But knowing that they may have multiple work sites, I think we wouldn't be bad to build in a functionality where you could kind of, as opposed to just adding the one corporate and then work site, could second work site, third work site have like a kind of a cascade in the functionality. It is certainly something we can bring back to the development team as well, if that's an issue.
Another question from the chat: how does this affect students who are working through DVRS grants?
I think the main point, or Commissioner, if you want to take this, the main point is who's paying them.
Yeah, but there should be no change. If they were, if they need to have working papers before, they need to have working papers now. It'll just be through this process.
Okay. And LaPrice, I saw your hand up. I don't know if you still have a question.
I was just going to type in the chat, got it. That was actually my question. Thank you.
Another question: can the employer section be edited if the contact manager leaves the location? Can a new manager be added?
I believe the contact information can be edited. They would probably still need a username and password. But in that case, yeah, that's a good question. The account will still be there. I think they do have the ability to go in and edit their contact information. But again, this yet another example of something that is really important feedback for us. I believe they do have the ability to edit their email address and their name, but I just want to double check to make sure it's clean.
Okay. And then someone just had a comment about the multiple locations. They said that would be a good thing to be added if possible at this point. All right, any other questions or comments? This is a lot of information. I appreciate you guys, taking all this feedback.
And also, if I could just add, we want to keep this conversation going. I think this type of input is really important for us to help fine tune this. With any IT build, it's an iterative process, but also keep in mind on where we're coming from. That old A300 form did not account for multiple work sites. It did not account for all these other nuances. So we're certainly going to be responsive to that. But come June 1, we're just making sure that we have a good system in place to make it easier for everyone.
Thank you. Another
Yes,
question.
I see Jessica's question there. If things aren't right on June 1st, we're shutting you down. No, I was actually just about to say, make the point specifically that this is, the case. No one is going to be getting in trouble for this stuff not being up and running on June 1st, June 2nd, June 3rd, whatever it may be. Again, the working papers law doesn't necessarily have penalties. The penalties are really about, one, whether or not you have working papers, and two, whether or not you're following the law as far as hours, wages, safety, and all of that. So certainly, this is going to be a far leap ahead, as Nicholas just said, in the ease of use of this process. But with anything new, there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be changes, but no one's coming out looking for people who've messed up. We want to learn with you as this moves forward to make this as easy as possible for all of you. But you cannot use paper as of June 1st. That is the one definite thing.
Thank you, and appreciate this is certainly a heavy lift for the department to get this all done, and appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing on it. Clearly, you've been extremely thoughtful on creating this process, and we look forward to, like you said, continuing the dialogue, seeing how it works, providing you with feedback once everything is live. So I will say, any final questions in the chat, or unmute yourself if there's anything you want to ask. We will be sending out materials from the department to all of you. We'll also send some helpful links in the email on just wage and hour compliance, things like that, since a lot of those questions popped up. And feel free, if there's anything that you guys need, any questions that you have, reach out to us and we'll try to get the best answers we can for you. All right, so thank you so much, Commissioner. Thanks, Nick, and all your team that's on the line, Jason, for sharing all the screens. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day.